Pop culture pastor.
So Cody, I would consider myself a connoisseur of mac and cheese.
I was going to say cheese, so I was really close.
You would think I was a connoisseur of cheese? No, cheese is highly scientific, man. I'm not that smart. The people that do cheese for a living, I couldn't even tell you. Like, I'm just basically cheddar, and maybe when I'm feeling saucy, Colby.
But Monterey Jack.
I mean, no, even then you're getting a little too crazy for me. So I wouldn't say I'm a connoisseur of cheese, but I would say I'm a connoisseur of mac and cheese. That's my bag. And I've seen it rubbing off on my son. So like we were in Branson last weekend for Dance Nationals, and we thought, hey, let's treat ourselves to one meal that's kind of fancy. And so when I say fancy, of course we went to the Olive Garden.
Oh, when you're here, you used to be family.
And we sit down at the table, and the waitress comes by, and my son has a question for the waitress. Yeah, your mac and cheese, is that Kraft? And she kind of laughed. She was like, she thought he was joking. And no, he was dead serious. And she was like, oh, no. And he was like, okay, I'll just get the pizza.
There's so much better mac and cheese than Kraft.
He doesn't want it, man. He just wants the Kraft. And so it got me thinking about our mac and cheese tastes, because I bet he would have liked the mac and cheese Olive Garden had. But here's my problem is when I often think I will like mac and cheese at restaurants because I'm a big mac and cheese guy, but then they do that stuff to fancify it. So they put like bacon on it. And
it's great.
Like, look, I like mac and cheese. I like bacon, but I don't want it together.
I do.
They put that like crunchy, whatever cheese layer on top.
Oh, that's good.
That hard. No, it ruins it. I don't want crunchy stuff in my mac and cheese. Keep that off.
If you can mix in some barbecue sauce, delightful.
Well, just ruin the whole thing, Cody. You just ruin it. I just want mac and cheese. That's all I want. I don't want any of your fancified junk.
So the best meal I've had at a particular chain that I will not name because I'm going to slander it.
Because they don't give us any money?
They don't give us any money, and I will slander it.
Okay.
Because the other meals I've had there in the past 2 or 3 years have been trash. But the best meal that I've had there was this fancy mac and cheese that had bits of chicken strips cut up into it. And then it did have like a glaze that was on top that was sweet and delicious.
I will say I'm a big fan of the crispy chicken now on top of that. I think that's pretty good.
It was delightful.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I was just thinking about all that.
There's a restaurant in Joplin, Jomo as the kids say, that they have nothing but mac and cheese dishes.
It's a mac and cheese restaurant.
It's called Mac and Cheesy.
Yeah. So basically what I'm guessing about that restaurant, according to my taste, I just want the mac and cheese. All the different versions of it where you'd have some different fanciful thing on it, I would hate.
So I think they do have your basic mac and cheese.
I just want the base.
Where some of us with more attuned and refined palates
get right. Come on.
Are like, give me your fancy mac and cheese, please, with randomness in it.
Cody's like over there eating mac and cheese with caviar on it. You can keep the fish eggs, man. Just give me the mac and cheese.
When in doubt, pinky out.
Well, good afternoon. This is Pop Culture Pastor. My name is Dave. Cody's here, and we talk about weird things.
Like mac and cheese.
Just like kind of whatever comes to our minds, which, lucky for you, we're pastors, and Jesus does come to our mind a lot.
He does.
So stay tuned. Lots of great music coming your way as well. So the states in the Southwest have been struggling with drought. And,
like for a millennia.
Yeah. Have you ever been to Hoover Dam?
I have not, but I've been to the Grand Canyon.
Okay, so you've been close. Hoover Dam, Lake Mead, it's all nearby that area. The Colorado River is kind of what runs through all of that. The Grand Canyon as well. And,
It does.
Apparently, did you know 40 million people and at least 30 tribal nations rely on the Colorado River for drinking water and electricity?
I knew a ton of people relied upon it for the electricity.
Yeah, and so officials and states have been trying to figure out how to cut back on the river water's use because the levels of the Colorado River have dropped like below anything we've seen in our lifetimes. And yesterday, the Interior Department announced that California, Nevada, and Arizona reached an agreement to cut their water use from the Colorado River. And I don't know that there's anything newsworthy in that or what that means, but apparently they're going to have to, find water somewhere else.
I can honestly say I can see in our area that we might get put on water restrictions this summer.
Because of a drought?
Mm-hmm. Because even with the rains that we did have, we were still behind where we should be normally.
Yeah.
And like the river's lower. So I wouldn't be shocked if like car washes aren't allowed to operate. If you're not supposed to stop watering your lawn, maybe the swimming pool closes. Those sorts of things.
It'll be interesting. The National Weather Service last week put out a El Nino watch, which hasn't happened since like the late 90s. And so apparently we're in line for another one of those El Nino things. Which is, for those that don't, habla español is Spanish for the Nino.
Or the boy.
Yeah, so I don't know. Good times. Like I watched 3 YouTube videos on El Nino. I still couldn't tell you
like
what it means.
Are we going to be in drought?
We could have. It could either be
or
basically
perpetual rain.
Okay. So I joked a little bit. Now let me be serious. From what I can understand is it's just presents variable weather conditions from what you're normally accustomed to. So if you're normally accustomed to not getting a lot of rainfall in the summer, then you'll get more. For our area, it seemed like maybe we would could mean less, which would be a problem because we are already kind of experiencing drought-like conditions. But basically, it just messes up the pattern of our normal weather seasons, right? That's kind of so. Like for instance, you would think, oh, El Nino, that must be bad, but it means less hurricanes. Because it changes the weather patterns enough that like apparently hurricanes have to have the perfect set of conditions to form. And it changes it enough where we'll probably have less hurricanes, but it does mean more tornadic activity in the continental United States. So yeah, it's a mixed bag.
And what does it do for the Northeast? Because I had seen the movie Perfect Storm starring Mark Wahlberg and George Clooney.
This is why, like, whenever anyone brings up like global warming and all that stuff, it's like, well, this is changing about weather and this is changing about weather. And it's like, isn't that like the definition of weather? It's always changing. Where's the control group here? I don't understand what we're comparing this to get. How do we know abnormal isn't normal?
And my friend Jesus talked about you don't know where the winds come from. You don't know where they're going.
I don't think he was just talking about wind, though.
Exactly.
Okay. I don't know what this says, but maybe you could tell me, Cody.
I can try.
Interesting study out recently on walking to school.
Oh.
Okay.
I've been to school before.
The people they asked, over 85% of people's parents, when they asked if your parents walk to school, 85% said yes.
One of mine did. The other one lived out in the country. So.
85% of our parents walk to school. when they asked whoever they were asking if we walk to school, it was down to 61%. And then they asked if your children walk to school. Guess what the number is?
20%.
10.
Oh, I was so close.
10% of kids walk to school. Now, I have a lot of thoughts here. I don't even know where to start other than my first question would be why? Why did that number get lower? I'm assuming there's the same amount of kids that live within a certain distance of schools. In fact, things are getting more urban, right? You know, in the last however many years, more people living in cities than.
So, like within the community we live in, there used to be 4 elementary schools.
Yeah.
And they were dispersed all across town. And now there's one, and it's not even centrally located. It's on the outskirts. So, like, for someone to walk there, the population significantly drops down how many would walk there. Mm-hmm. And so, like...
But do you think everywhere is like that? Do you think that's happening in a lot of places?
I do think that as buildings age and school districts get funding to build new buildings because they're more energy efficient, that they're like, let's move this. But then I can also see part of it's going to be just because of the culture of parents right now that like, oh, it's not safe to let your kids out on these streets.
Yeah, I mean...
And I know schools also now make a push because they get reimbursed for having so many bus students. There's a bus stop next to my house.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of kids that go to the bus stop. They walk to the bus stop. So they might not walk to school, but they're walking several blocks to the bus stop.
I think you're right about the especially that first point. I do think we're going to bigger elementary schools when in the past they were smaller and more spread out. More buildings, now less buildings, one bigger elementary school where all the kids go. A mega school, if you will.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole thing about safety. Let me put this in my personal context because it's easier to explain that way.
Okay.
When I was a kid, my mom did not know where I was going. I wouldn't say she didn't care, but she didn't care. Okay? Because she didn't. It's fair to say that she cared about me. She cared if something happened to me. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that there wasn't this thing. And like my mom, was aware that things happen out in the world, but it was just a thing. He's like, well, come back before the street lights come on.
Dave was basically living in Mayberry.
No, I was not. I grew up in Topeka and Lawrence, and I got look on my 16th birthday, I got jumped by 3 dudes, random attack. So like things happened in the places I lived, but back then like it wasn't a big deal. Now my mom will come visit us, and my kids will be playing out in the front yard, and she comes in and she's like, "You let your kids play out front without watching them?" Yeah.
How dare you?
And she's like, anybody could just snatch them. And I'm like, well, right, but a meteor could fall on my head right now too. I mean, I can have control over that either. What's wrong with you? And it was like, and then you go to the obvious. It's like, why do you love them more than you love me? Like you didn't care where I was when I was young and playing outside. We played outside all the time. And here's the weird part. She's not alone.
Yeah.
Lots of people have this attitude now of like, there's just a boogeyman behind every, windowless van ready to snatch our kids. But here's the problem with all of that. It's the safest time to be alive for everyone, and especially kids. Did you know that? Statistically, it's the safest time ever to be a kid.
That's bananas.
In human history, in 1800, 44% of children died before their 5th birthday. 44%, Cody.
That is a massive number.
In 2016, we're down to 4. I mean, like, it's so doom and gloom out there. But this is interesting. This study, in 1800, 10% of adults had the basic skills to read and write. 10. 2016, 86%.
Hey, look at us.
In 1900, the share of Earth's land surface that was protected as some sort of national park or reserve, 0.03% in 1900. In 2016, 14.7%. In 1970, far more smokers than there are now.
Oh, even in the early 90s, like people were huffing and puffing in Pizza Hut. You had to go to the family section if you didn't want the smoke in your pizza.
In 1980, 58% of the world's population had water from a protected source. 58%. In 2015, we're up to 88%. Nearly 9/10 of the world by 2015 had safe water to drink. In 1893, the countries with equal rights for women to vote. This is crazy. There was one country in 1893 where women could vote. That wasn't that long ago. In 2017, there's 193 out of 194 where women get to vote.
That's nice.
Also, way to go, Iran. Messed it up for the perfection. I don't know if it was Iran.
I was going to say.
I'm pretty sure Iranians can vote. Now they all hate me. Battle deaths in war. We went up to a high per 100,000 people. There were 201 per every 100,000 people that died in 1942. Since then, we've never gotten above, double digits. And it gets lower every year. Look, this goes on and on. Less people die from disasters. Less people are starving. It's the internet. It's information. It's constantly in front of your eyes. And what gets clicks is the bad news. And so you get fooled into thinking that we live in a world where people are just mass shooting and mass killing and mass kidnapping and human trafficking and all of these things. And I don't know what to tell you except for the statistics say, no. Everything's actually way better than it was when we were kids and tons better than when our parents were kids.
I'm going to blame not only the social media / news outlets, but Lifetime movies.
Yeah.
Kids in the 80s, more particularly the Walsh family. Like that movie put enough fear into the hearts and minds of moms and maybe a few dads out there.
Yeah. My mom made me watch the made-for-TV movie Adam.
Yep.
About Adam Walsh getting taken from a department store in the 80s. And then made me watch it. And then at the end was like, that's why you don't walk away from me in the department store. And that was probably the beginning, right? That was the beginning. So, but I want to steer this back to where we started. Now, I want you to imagine the way our kids' lives are different from our lives and our parents' lives when they were kids. And I want you to see the mountain of stress and intensity we've put on our children, decisions that we wish they wouldn't have to make, and stress about who they are even. Think about the things they think about now that I never once thought about my identity when I was a kid. Never. I never once, it's not that, it's not that there might not be some pros and cons, it's not that there might not be some pros from having a kid consider who they are. It just wasn't a thing. I was innocently naive. And I think it was better that way. I didn't struggle with that. There was no stress when it came to who I am in my life. It was all informed for me. And maybe that's a bad thing too, to have it completely informed. My identity completely informed. Sure, we struggled with that when we got to adulthood, just like every other human before us. But now there's a mountain of things on kids. And to top it all off, well, they don't walk to school anymore. And I'm like, well, why not? And as we said in the first segment, it's a lot of things.
Oh, yeah. You can't just pinpoint one thing. Even the idea that now there's multiple parents are working. like the idea that both parents are working more consistently, and also that the likelihood that the kid is even in a home with both parents. It could just be one parent 1 week and then the other parent the other week, or one parent most of the time, the other parent on the weekends. And so there's added complexities. And so that leads to get on the bus, or I'm taking you on my way to work.
Yeah. Well, but that didn't start in this generation.
I know, but like all those things are trending in like bigger numbers than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Not the parents working thing. That exploded in my generation. Generation X. We were the latchkey kids. By third or fourth grade, I'm getting up, getting myself ready for school, making sure I get to the school bus stop, or walking to school. I was walking to school in second grade in Topeka. I walked 12 blocks. By the way, if you need a calculator,
that's a mile.
That's a mile.
Yeah.
I walked a mile to school and back every day by myself. Latchkey, had it hanging around my neck. Let myself in. Sometimes cook myself an early dinner.
I do think that it's still a higher percentage now than it was in the 80s.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. I knew several families when I was a kid that the mom didn't work. And now it's like, your mom doesn't work? What is she doing?
The point is, the numbers say that less kids are walking now.
Yeah.
And I think when we think about all these factors, and we all want our kids to be safe, right? But I wonder if it's not, and again, we talk about this generation a lot of kids, and we're like, what are they doing? What's going on here, man? This generation, like, listen, stop that. It's us. They're not the problem. It's us. Look what we've done. We've put a little window to the world's data in their hand.
Oh, yeah.
And then maybe that's not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is we have those. And all the bad news goes into our brain, and we become paranoid and convinced that our children are in danger 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And it's just simply untrue in the sense that we're talking about. Like, look, a meteor could fall through your house at night and kill you all. And if you want to look at life like that, you certainly can. But we used to say, that's not likely. That's not likely. Every time you step out of your house, you invite a percentage of danger, but it's not likely. And it's even less likely now than it was then. And so what am I saying? I don't know. This all started about a study where kids don't walk to school as much, a lot less. And there's a lot of factors for that. But then it turned into this. And if you'll allow me to step on my soapbox here, let your children go. Let them go be kids like we were let go. And that doesn't mean you don't know where they're at. And then it doesn't mean that you just stop paying attention. But it does mean you let them live a little. That's the whole thing about being a parent, is it's almost like an invisible leash, if you will, where the kid thinks they're out there and they're being independent, but you have a grasp on the situation. You know where they're at, but let them go out and play. Let them walk to school if they can.
Do it.
I often think about the circumstances of my life and frame them in a negative light. My parents got divorced when I was young, raised by a single mom. She had to work. And I think about all the time I spent alone, and I used to frame that in a negative sense. Now I can see the positives.
And I think that, there's the whole scripture about going through struggles, building character, perseverance, all those sorts of things. But when you go through struggles, it builds up tolerance. Yeah. And you can have a larger window of tolerance for bad stuff, highs and lows. Yeah. Versus like if you don't experience anything in your life, your window of tolerance might be very low.
Well, what you just said is where I want to end up, because that's a completely different outcome that we've often wondered about, is since we have enveloped our kids in this little safety bubble, where they haven't been able to experience the adversity that we would like, they're not trained and ready for the kind of adversity the world is going to throw at them. And then when they get hit with it, they react in a way of like, wait, what is this? How is this happening? This is not right. I've lived in this safe bubble and this is not right. We got to go out and tear things down and how dare you? And then there's this animosity to the older generations where they're like, how could you let things get like this? And I'm here to tell you they have every right to be angry because we've been pretending they live in this different world. And then when they're confronted with the brokenness of that world, what other reaction are they going to have but anger? And that we have misled them, which we have. I guess the point of all this is raise your kids in a way where you can walk with them hand in hand through the real world. It's not as bad as you think, but also if you're pretending that it's bad and you're putting them in a bubble, then it's going to seem bad to them when they finally get out of that bubble. And then they're going to wonder why you didn't tell them the truth.
Word.
Anyways, that was a long and sprawling outcome for that. And I'm sorry.
We're very heavy on this Friday.
All right, welcome back. We're taking a look at headlines. You look like you have something to say.
I don't.
Oh,
this is just my look.
this is my go face.
You're welcome.
The House passed a bill yesterday to raise the federal government's $31.5 trillion debt limit by a 314 to 117 vote. Now it heads to the Senate for debate, but maybe we're going to raise the debt limit. And I'm just sitting here like, well, when do we get to raise the people's debt limit? Oh, is there an amount of debt we can have where we can expect that it's expected we'll never pay it and we can just keep raising it? Is that you're not going to transfer that to the people? We can't have that? Or we still get prosecuted if we have a debt that we're clearly never going to pay?
Well,
I'm confused by this whole thing.
See, the government's too big to fail.
Granted, I understand that the entire world now is tied to the United States economy, and that's true. Like, if the United States economy fell, like if the foundation of it just broke, like that would be terrible for the world. I don't know that that's a good thing. I think that's a bad thing, clearly. But I just don't understand this whole thing. Like, well, every year we're going to argue about raising the debt ceiling. Yeah, well, we need our debt to go higher because we can't pay our people. This is just so weird. It's so bonkers. And then why aren't people allowed to then say, oh, you didn't pay your taxes? Well, we're going to arrest you. Now, hold on a second. I mean, wait. Is leading by example not a thing anymore?
It is not. Unless you can make a good case that the Rimbolt family is too big to fail in the economy of Chanute.
We're clearly not, and you keep saying too big to fail like that's a common sense thing.
It is.
When it's not. It's just...
That's what my friend Barry taught me.
It's just something we say.
Yeah, Barry O taught me that in 2008.
Okay, but if the United States fell, like if today we just ceased being a country and everything that accordingly went with it, like all the financial stuff, the world would struggle for a while, but humans would endure, right? Humanity would go on. We'd make it through.
You would hope.
So we're not too big to fail. We can fail. And we will. America won't always be here.
What?
I know, this is shocking news.
I didn't realize I was working with Walter Cronkite.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I'm Tom Brokaw. Younger generation. Anyways. I don't know, man. This stuff is just wonky to me, and it doesn't make sense. And then you're going to make college kids take their business classes and economy classes, but then we do stuff like this and you're like, what is it we're teaching?
We want you to learn how to do it right, but don't look at the way we do it.
Do as we say, not as we do.
Yes.
That should be e pluribus unum. No. Do as we say, not as we do. That should be our new national motto.
Make it happen, Captain.
Hey everybody, Dave here. What you have just listened to are bits and pieces of our radio show. We have a radio show on KFEX Firescape Radio located in Chanute, Kansas. You can hear that show from noon to 4 every weekday. So if you want to tune into that, you can go to www.kfex931.com, or you can search KFEX in your app store on your smartphone and find their totally free app there. If you're a fan of Christian music, you might like to listen to our live show when you're at work, or if you're a stay-at-home mom and you like music in the house, you may love to listen to that during the day. So give it a try. We would also direct you to our podcast, Pop Culture Pastor. That's probably why you're listening anyways to this version of what we do. As always, subscribe to the podcast, follow us on our social medias on Facebook and Twitter. It helps us out when you share it, when you review and rate us on our podcast homes. And of course, follow us on social media and share our stuff there. So thank you so much for listening. We love all of you guys so much. We have such a great community of listeners, and we'll see you when the regular pod drops on Friday.